Greetings. This is Yasha Ben Israel back at you one more time with another good special for you. Today we will be breaking down the debate who are the real children of Israel. That debate is being furnished to us by Dr. Michael Brown and also Eleazar Ben something, I don't know his last name, Gorilla Hebrew, the guy from the Sacarii sect. We're going to get into this. We're going to break it down. I'm not going to hold you up. We're going to just really get in it. And what I'm going to do is when there's a foul point being pushed, I'm going to stop and talk about that. Okay, on either side. And if there's a good point, I may speak on it or I may amen it. I may kudos it. I may some kind of way, give it a thumb, validate it, and give it a thumbs up. But today, we're just going to go and look at this debate and we're going to just check it out. Before we get into that, I want to say how the Israelite movement is starting to take off, and the scholarship that's in the Israelite movement is diverse. Okay, there's many different Israelites to teach many different things, so that's what's going to make this show a treat. Okay, we're going to see a different angle here. Okay. All right, let's go. Let's get into this. Ready? Let's go.
All right, so we're going to bring up the PowerPoint in a moment, so you can start my time right now. Hey, thanks so much everyone for tuning in. Thanks, Brother Brian, for hosting this, Vocab for setting up, and of course Alazar for stepping forward to do this. Yes. I just want to give a quick bit of history in terms of how this is set up. Here and there on my radio show, I talk about Hebrew Israelite issues. And I constantly be challenged in YouTube comments, why are you afraid to debate us? And I said, I'm not. I just need someone to debate. So I've said that for a few years. It has to be qualified so they can represent their position well. When Alazar stepped forward to do it, of course, very, very happy to do it. Now, I want to talk first to people on my side. Some of you might say, why are you debating this guy? Man, he's a street thug. Man, he's just dangerous, inflammatory, racist rhetoric. Well, for sure. I take very strong issue with some of the rhetoric that I've heard on the street from Alazar. I don't expect you here.
He's qualified, and what qualified him is the simple fact that he is the leader of a large group of BHI participants. So, I mean, in your argument and your whole stance, is against that. So he is one of the leaders, and that's what qualifies him, if nothing else. And I'm sure there's nothing else. Let's go.
That tonight. But the fact is, there are millions of people in America that seem to have similar sentiments. He's a recognized leader, and I absolutely know he came in prepared. So hear what he has to say and evaluate it based on facts and information. Now, there's some that might be on Alazar's side, and you're not going to listen to me because of the color of my skin. I mean, that's as dumb.
Well, no, they're not going to listen to you because they're indoctrinated. There's other Israelites that are the same color skin as them, and they refuse to listen to them because, I mean, they're indoctrinated. It's as simple as that.
As being wheeled into an emergency ward, and you decide to die rather than let a white doctor help you. So if skin color is going to get in the way of listening, then the devil's already won. So
right.
I've been introduced by Alazar very graciously as a PhD and a scholar and all of that. So hear me out, and then may truth triumph. That
skin color shouldn't get in the way because y'all both white. All three of y'all white.
Is the request. So just so you know my overall position, absolutely there are Black Jews and Hispanic Jews. I'm not debating that at all. I am saying that the 12-tribe chart itself is completely bogus, and that, yes, Ashkenazi Jews are among other Jews. Yes, they are legitimate Israelites. All right, so let's put the PowerPoint up, and I'll begin my presentation. There we go.
But you got to prove that. You're going to have to prove that they are the legitimate Israelites.
All right, so what I'm going to do is first debunk a sample of the worst errors on the chart, and then we'll demonstrate that Ashkenazi Jews are authentic descendants of Israel.
Let's go.
I'm fine with basing our debate on patrilineal descent, meaning we trace Israelite heritage through the father. I'm fine with that. I may have some related questions later on, but we'll proceed with the patrilineal argument. Now, as for the chart, it's flawed in many obvious ways, including sweeping generalizations, glaring omissions, including the omission of Mizrahi Jews, some of whom had a continuous documented presence in the Middle East for over 2,500 years, among others, and insupportable claims. Of course, the chart you're familiar with, I'm sure Al-Azhar will be getting into it more as we go on. Now, if any part of the chart is false, then the chart cannot be trusted. Keep this in mind throughout the debate. And over the course of Al-Azhar's presentation, listen carefully for factual, historically verifiable, conclusive evidence that connects the different groups of this chart to the specific tribes of Israel listed, not general alleged connections or highly suspect historical anecdotes or convoluted biblical interpretations, but clear, indisputable, historical, scriptural, and genetic connections to each specific tribe.
Sound clear to me.
Hang on, there we go.
Sound
that
fair to me.
evidence doesn't exist. And if any point he raises seems to have substance, I'll address it during the times of rebuttal. The Alliance for Black Jews, by the way, claims that there are roughly 200,000 Black American Jews, meaning roughly 0.5% of African Americans. And yes, of course, there are Hispanic Jews, but that is something very different from what the chart claims. So first proof that the chart is bogus, it contradicts Deuteronomy 28:62. There it's written, to Israel in exile, you shall be left a scant few after having been as numerous as the stars in the skies, because you did not heed the command of your God Yahweh. Yet according to the 12 tribes chart, there are at least 400 million Israelites today, including 47 million African Americans, 185 million Central Americans, 126 million Mexicans, 11 million Haitians, and 11 million Cubans. This is anything but few in number. Even if you say, well, the chart doesn't mean that every single person and every single group is an Israelite, you have to acknowledge that the vast majority are not Israelites, in which case you've shot yourself in the foot.
Woo, goodness. Y'all have to listen to what this man is saying.
This one fact disqualifies the chart, especially when you compare this number of more than 400 million alleged Israelites with the Jewish population today of about 15 million people, which group is dramatically fewer in number. Also, Africans were brought to America from several different parts of the continent, which means that those various parts of Africa must have been Israelite as well, potentially adding several hundred million to the number of alleged true Israelites alive today. This is hardly few in number. Second proof, the chart relies on bogus connections. One of the proofs that Issachar is Mexico, this is from a speech, a 3-hour YouTube lecture that Al-Azhar gave in July of 2022, I believe. One of the proofs that Issachar is Mexico today is the alleged Hebrew derivation of Azteca from two Hebrew words meaning time and congregation, which would supposedly connect them to the sons of Issachar in 1 Chronicles 12:32, who understood the times and seasons. This is utter nonsense. Hebrew Oz means then. It's not a noun meaning time. And there is no Hebrew word teka. Instead, there is a verb tacha, which likely means to follow. Encyclopedia Britannica also points out that the name Aztec is derived from Aztlan, variously translated as white land, land of white herons, or place of herons, in allusion to their origins probably in northwestern Mexico. Similar errors, which are blatant falsehoods and not simply matters of interpretation, undermine the chart on every score. Plus, there is no literary or genetic or linguistic connection between Mexico and Issachar. And I don't say this to mock as much as to help those who really want truth from the Most High. In fact, there's not a stitch. Well, hang on, looks like we skipped a slide here. So next proof, Haiti is not Levi. And in fact, there's not a stitch of concrete evidence connecting the Haitians to the Levites any more than there's a factual connection between any of the peoples of this chart and the specific tribes of Israel that are claimed.
Whoa. Now, I mean, Eleazar, man, you got a lot of proving to do, man. He's really. This is how a proper debate is supposed to take place, and I'm proud of Eleazar so far. You know, for holding it down and displaying proper decorum.
Deuteronomy 33:10 says about Haiti, not about Haiti, about Levi, they shall teach your laws to Jacob and your instructions to Israel. They shall offer you incense to savor and whole offerings on your altar. Well, Haiti is not teaching the children of Israel the laws of God. Mm-hmm. Haiti is not observing the seventh-day Sabbath. Mm-hmm. They don't follow the Torah. They don't circumcise their sons on the eighth day. Mm-hmm. They don't eat only biblically kosher food, let alone teach all Israel to follow the Torah. Haiti is not Levi. In point of fact, I can add this. There's a slide of mine that got missed along the way, that according to the Bible, the Levites were scattered among all the different tribes of Israel. Preach. So there's no possible way they all end up starting in one place in a small island off the...
Wow. That was fire. And that was my main argument, because the Levites were the small group of people, right? And they were small because they didn't have their own allotment. The Levites they lived amongst the 12 tribes, and according to the scriptures, they didn't have their own allotment. So being that the Israelites didn't have their own allotment, they lived scattered amongst all of the other tribes, and that is a fact. So there was no, they were not like the other 11 tribes that had allotments where you could say, well, these had a designated spot in place in land in history, meaning that if this area got usurped, or if this area got conquered or enslaved or even dispersed, right, you can follow that lineage of people, right, from that demographic. Well, you can't do that with Levi. It is virtually impossible. So you cannot say that Levi is one group of people. I am an Israelite. I am black. I am Hebrew. Am I a black Hebrew Israelite? Probably by definition, yes, but not by being a part of any of those particular groups, because I believe a lot of those groups are cults. Or let's get back to the information. Dr. Michael Brown is coming very, 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 very hard. I mean, coming very hard. I want to see what kind of strategy they're going to use to get up out of this one.
Coast of America, and then from there go out completely against history on every level. Fourth proof: Native Americans are not Reuven or Gad. DNA studies, some of them published by former Mormon leaders, make clear that these peoples have an East Asian or Siberian descent, not a Middle Eastern or even African descent. This was a revelation for these former Mormons, since the Book of Mormon, like the 12 Tribes story, claims that Native Americans were actually Israelites. This information caused these leaders to leave Mormonism behind. So in point of fact, and there's a great study, I'll put the copy of the book up, Losing a Lost Tribe. In point of fact, the Mormons agreed with the 12 Tribes chart in terms of the Native Americans being original Israelites. It's bogus. That's why they left Mormonism. And to repeat, there's not a stitch of factual evidence, including solid linguistic evidence, to connect any Native American people with Reuven or God. This is pure fiction.
Conjecture.
And note that large-scale genetic studies indicate that these Native Americans were here on our continent even before Israel was formed as a nation. Here's one example, Science Magazine, November 2018.
Whoa. Michael Brown is good. I want to see how Eleazar. This is a good debate, y'all.
Thanks to that. Fifth proof: the chart contradicts Deuteronomy 28:68. And this is just a sampling of what could be dozens and dozens of truths. Deuteronomy 28:68, you're familiar with it. Yahweh will send you back to Egypt in galleys by a route which I told you should not see again. There you shall offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but none will buy. This verse does not apply to anyone on this chart, especially not Mexicans or Seminole Indians or Central Americans, among others. Not at all. They were never slaves in Egypt, let alone sent by ship back to Egypt.
He said not to anyone on that chart. Now, he said it, and he's demonstrating it. All Guerrilla Hebrew got to do is refute it, and that can be refuted because of the fact that he said that he came with a hasty generalization. You know what I'm saying? Where he just generalized. He just made a fast generalization. And Eleazar should be quick and intelligent enough to catch that and find at least one. That's all he have to do. He don't even have to find a group or a boatload. All he have to do is find one. He said it doesn't apply to any one on that chart, and he can find several if he knew how to. Let's go forward.
The slaves. As for the idea that Egypt sometimes does not refer to a physical place in the Old Testament, but rather to any place of slavery and bondage, that too is completely bogus, which I can easily demonstrate if this point is challenged. In fact, if you just read two more verses into Deuteronomy 29, verse 2, Moses tells you that this refers to literal Egypt. Now, before I go further here, I do want to point out that the ancient Jews were sold back into Egypt in ships, according to Josephus and other early Jewish historians, as far as what happened in the first century after the destruction of the temple.
Good, and he excluded all of those people on that chart from that. Some kind of way, the guerrilla Hebrew is going to have to include at least one. And and that would make him look bad. Or two, or three, or 10, or a boatload, or a colony. Right? Let's go.
Sixth proof: the chart ignores the real Jews who preserve the Hebrew Bible and Hebrew language. It is the people that the world recognizes as Jews today who suffered the terrible curses of Deuteronomy 28. Not all the peoples listed on the chart who, to repeat, with rare exception, have no connection whatsoever.
The Jews today does not, the people today does not recognize the Jews today as the people who suffered the curses of Deuteronomy 28. That is just not so. Now he's making that up.
To ancient Israel. This, of course, does not minimize for a second the horrible sufferings of African Americans or Native Americans in the past, nor does it deny that some African Americans descended from Israel. It is simply to point out who really fulfills the sad history of Deuteronomy 28. Now, contrast this complete lack of genetic, biological, historical, traditional, or ritual connection to ancient Israel from the vast majority of those listed on the chart with the fact that those recognized by the world today as Jews, among whom are millions of Ashkenazi Jews, have continued to maintain Jewish identity through the millennia despite horrific persecution. They have been persecuted as Jews for more than 2,000 years and kicked out of countries because they are Jews.
That sounds
this is
good,
highly
but
significant when
that
you
can be
remember
argued
how
too.
difficult and unpopular it has been to be a Jew over the last 2,000 years. I can assure you that there were no blacks and Latino Hebrew Israelites standing on street corners in Nazi-controlled Europe shouting, "We are the real Jews." These real Jews have observed the Sabbath, kept the dietary laws, and practiced circumcision on the 8th day. They have genealogical connections.
Well, the thing about that goes is that there's a large number of European Jews that came from Russia. They came from Russia. They came from Germany. They came from Poland. And a lot of those people weren't even circumcised. And you can hear the debate between Dr. Ben and the European Jew from the what's the name of that Jewish organization that they're from? I can't think of it right now because it's not important. But if you can see that debate, Dr. Ben talked about how they went as far as to change Jewish laws for the black Jews that were entering into Israel, and they were allowing European Jews to come into Europe, and many were grown men that wasn't even circumcised. So we do have evidence of a continuation because many of them European Jews over there are not even circumcised today. So a lot of them are. So he need to just stop that.
Ancient Israel historical connections, traditional connections, and DNA connections, confirming the priestly genealogical connections in particular. And these Jews, who are real Jews, as opposed to some of the fake Jews on the chart, have preserved the Hebrew scriptures and Hebrew language, as opposed to the completely mythical so-called Lashon Kodesh, which I'll call LQ from here. And while I understand we're not debating here the legitimacy of this modern, totally made-up pronunciation, this does tie in with the question of authenticity. Since if the pronunciation of LQ is true, which it is not, then every speaker of every Semitic language throughout history and until today is wrong, since similar grammatical and morphological and phonetic principles apply across these languages.
Well, that's fact too, and it's funny how Gorilla Hebrew, when he was talking about the high priest and the chief priest, the Kahan Rosh and the Kohen Gadol, right? He used modern Hebrew. You notice that he did not use Lashawan Kadesh. You know what I'm saying? Because in Lashawan Kadesh, the word would have Gadol would have been Gadawal, right? Gadawala, or something like Gadawal or Gadawala, right? And Gada, yeah, Gadawal. It would have been Gadawal, and chief would have been Rasha or Rash, right? And then uh Kohen would have been uh Kawaha Kawahan, right? So he didn't even use none of that. You know, he used the modern Hebrew when he was talking to this man, and this shows the phoniness that Michael is demonstrating, and Michael should have poured and pointed that out. Why did when he was referring to the chief priest and the head priest? Why he did not use Lashawan Kadash and he used modern Hebrew or biblical Hebrew of the biblical text? Why did he do that? He shot himself in the foot coming in out the gate.
If the pronunciation is LQ is accurate, which it is not, then every recognized
LQ is Lashawan Kadash.
Hebrew and Semitic grammar and lexicon is wrong, along with every Semitic place name on every map, including place names like Jerusalem and Judah, and every transcription of Hebrew in the Greek Septuagint and the Greek New Testament, including the names of the 12 tribes in Revelation 7. They're all wrong if LQ is right. In short, LQ contradicts every Semitic language spoken or written in history because it is a recent Hebrew Israelite invention, and we can trace vocalization back to ancient times. This calls into question the Hebrew Israelite claim to authenticity, since the same Hebrew Israelites who purport to have the true pronunciation of Hebrew also purport to have the true information about the 12 tribes. Those are actually claims that real Hebrew is, quote, a bastardized version of LQ. So we're not debating LQ tonight.
Well, he said that he could trace that back to ancient times. What Gorilla Hebrew is going to should do is have him to demonstrate that. Ask him to prove it. Ask him to establish his truth by giving us a small sample of a demonstration of that truth. Proceed.
Bogus pronunciation. We're debating authenticity. And if you have the language wrong, you can bet you got the other things wrong as well. So without a doubt, the 12 tribes chart is bogus. But are my ancestors really related to ancient Israel? If so, why are we white-skinned when certainly ancient Israelites were not white? Some claim that we're descendants of the Khazars who allegedly converted en masse to Judaism in the 9th century. But that theory has been thoroughly debunked along several lines, including genetic, historical, and linguistic.
No, it has not.
If the Khazar argument is raised, I'll be glad to rebut it.
No, it has not.
As for the Hebrew name Ashkenaz in the Bible, it refers to an entirely different people having nothing to do with Europe, referring most likely to the Scythians, and now extinct people in Central Asia.
Right.
So first proof of our authenticity, DNA
the people you come
confirms the authenticity of Ashkenazi Jews. As for the most comprehensive recent DNA study of Ashkenazi Jews, spearheaded by geneticists from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Harvard Medical School and published November 30th, 2022, it confirms that we can trace our lineage back to first century Jewish communities in Italy, which would include those sold as slaves into Rome, as well as earlier Jewish communities there, which Acts mentions. And here's a reference to the study. Subsequently, as Italians converted
Stop. It's what Gorilla Hebrew is going to have to do is he have to understand that in science they have what's called the criteria of falsifiability. That means that every theory, every model has been debunked, every one of them. and he said that the idea of the Khazarian Jews has been debunked, but the idea that it has not. I mean, the idea that it has been debunked. That idea has been debunked. So that's how science works. And what Gorilla Hebrew should do in his round is that while he's doing this, he should throw away everything that he has in immediate or put that to the side. And while my man talking, he should be looking on the computer and pulling up the facts of the many geneticists that has debunked the theory that the Khazars are not that the Khazars are Israelites. That has been debunked. That the Khazars, that the Europeans are Khazars instead of being Israelites. It has been debunked both ways. You understand? So Eliezer should know that, and he probably doesn't. But let's get to this next segment.
Into Judaism, our European skin color became part of our heritage. Then, as these Jews made their way into other parts of Europe and settled there, the same process continued, explaining our Caucasian complexion. But the same process occurred with African Jews or Hispanic Jews or Asian Jews, all of whom reflect other peoples marrying into the people of Israel, hence the many different colors and ethnicities of Jews worldwide, in contrast with the original brown-skinned Israelites. For the record, even if you argue that the original Israelites were black, then there had to be conversion and intermarriage to explain the other ethnic and racial groups on the chart. But not only does DNA in general give us a clear link back to ancient Israel, the fact is, as I mentioned before, Ashkenazi Jews who are of priestly descent share the same priestly gene as do Lemba Jews in Africa and Sephardi Jews worldwide. How could this be unless our Kohanim, our priests, actually descended from a common priestly ancestor? If Ashkenazi Jews have no genetic connection to Israel, then where did we acquire this gene?
Yeah, but your Europeans have a connection to Europe. I'm talking about to the Caucasus and Anatolia and areas like that, and even parts of Asia. You know, you people have genes that go back to those places, and you can't deny that. Okay, I'm talking about that has nothing to do with Israel, and that's what needs to be harped upon. Okay.
Less than 2 minutes. Note also that geneticists have pointed out that the Y chromosome, meaning the paternal, the fatherly chromosome of most Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews, contains mutations that are common among Middle Eastern peoples but uncommon in the general European population. This suggests that the paternal lineages of Ashkenazi Jews could be traced mostly to the Middle East. These geneticists add that diaspora Jews from Europe, Northwest Africa, and the Near East resemble each other more closely than they resemble their non-Jewish neighbors. Put another way, Ashkenazi Jews originated in the Middle East.
But what he's supposed to do is quote that study, okay, and who did that study, right? Because that is only the study of one man. Another man has done a study and came up with something totally different from that based off the same genes.
Second proof, Ashkenazi Jews have lived by the Torah and Jewish traditions. Just ask, who has kept the traditions through the centuries? Who has passed on the Hebrew language? Who has passed on the Hebrew scriptures? And who is it that continues the traditions of the Pharisees in the New Testament who rejected Jesus? Sadly, those are my ancestors, the Ashkenazi Jews, going straight back to biblical times. And then lastly, God has brought us back to the land of Israel in accordance with his promises. Yeshua made clear in Matthew 23 that a Jewish Jerusalem must welcome him back. So the question is, who is it that God brought back to Israel and controls Jerusalem today?
Oh my God! Now he's doing way too much. I'll let him go.
It's Sephardi Jews and Ashkenazi Jews and Mizrahi Jews and Ethiopian Jews, among others. And as for the sufferings these Jewish people have endured, including Ashkenazi Jews, our pain is as great.
There's no way that you can prove that Ashkenazi Jews go back to the biblical times. In fact, there's no way that you can prove Ashkenazi Jews go back before the 7th century AD. And that is a fact.
As the pain of any people through history. So I can expand on all these points at great length, along with expose more of the fallacies of the chart. Listen carefully to Al-Azhar. Listen for concrete, clear, undeniable proof. And anything that's raised that raises a question, I will address it in the rebuttal. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Well, I'll say the round one was an excellent round for Michael Brown. He had a little funk up in there, but he had a lot of facts that the gorilla Hebrew should not ignore. And he's probably going to ignore those, and he's going to try to change the narrative if I know how those One West guys do. Okay. And that stuff doesn't work when you're dealing with real scholars and a real scholarship. But round one was a real good round for Michael Brown. I would say out of his round of 100% truth, I would give him, I'll give him about 80%. He told about 80% truth in his opening round. So let's listen to what Eleazar, my gorilla Hebrew, got to say.
About 3 seconds left. Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for your opening statement. Brother Brian, if you were able to make me a moderator, because there's almost 2,998 specifically. It just jumped to 3,000. There's 3,000 plus people watching. And I see some people doing the kind of comments we're not trying to do, talking about people's physical appearance and all that. And I'm trying to block those people, time them out. So if you could please do that. All right. We're going to move on to Al-Azhar. We're going to bring up that PowerPoint as well. Al-Azhar, once you begin speaking, that's when I start the timer, and not until then. But once he does, it is 17 minutes. Just like Dr. Brown, I will give you a 2-minute warning as well. I believe that is all that needs to be said. This is the second opening statement by Gorilla Hebrew, Al-Azhar, and he has 17 minutes. The floor is yours.
Real quick, I'm going to press play. I just want to make sure that everything is looking right when I do that.
You got control? Is it working?
Yeah, hold on. I just want to, it's moving too fast. Hold on. Good now? You can see, okay. I'm just making sure. Okay, cool. I'm good to go.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer when you start speaking. And again, Berean, I'm going to drop a comment. Give me that control. I'm muting myself. Go ahead.
All right, first and foremost, I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, whose name in the Hebrew is Yahweh. Right, I do so in the name of his only begotten Son, who the world knows as Jesus Christ, whose name in the ancient Hebrew is Yahweh Shai. I'm Chief Priest Al-Azhar Baloy, the Gorilla Hebrew. Just a high school dropout, convicted felon, street thug, and just kind of want to walk y'all through some stuff tonight. So, who are the legit children of Israel? Right, that's a nice question. First and foremost, I want to take you guys here to Revelations 2 and 9, right? And it reads, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them, which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Somebody is perpetrating a fraud. Somebody is going around saying they are Jews and are not. And I'd like to take this into consideration, Romans 3 and 4. God forbid, yea, let God be true, but every man a liar. Tonight we are going to let the word of God be the final authority on who, in fact, is the true Jew and who is the synagogue of Satan.
Well, that don't mean that as of today, mighty gorilla Hebrew. That means at least that of the time the book was written, that was the mindset. All right, that people was walking around claiming to be Jews and were not. And so that doesn't mean that that's going to be the case in 2023.
Right? Isaiah 8 and 20. Look to God's instructions and teachings. People who contradict his word are completely in the dark. So after we take a look at all of this evidence for who is the legit children of Israel, the 12 tribes chart of the Ashkenazi Jews, right? Whoever's identity contradicts the word of God, that's the people who are in the dark, right? So again, I want to reiterate tonight's topic, right? And that is, who are the legit children of Israel? Legit, of course, is short for legitimate. Legitimate means conforming to the law or to rules. It's important, right? So, and who are the children of Israel? Let's define that. Israel is a man who was originally named Jacob. This is a debate about who is legitimately his child, children, or offspring. This is not about who is allowed to convert to Judaism. I want to make that clear. It's about who the legitimate offspring. How do we establish if somebody's a legitimate offspring of Jacob or Israel? It's very simple. Numbers 1 and 18. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day, on the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, as Dr. Michael Brown himself has already affirmed. Ezra 2 and 9 affirms it also. It says, but they cannot shew their father's house and their seed, whether they were of Israel. One more, of course, here we have Leviticus 24 and 10, where we have an Israelitish woman. She has a son by an Egyptian, and he is juxtaposed from the children of Israel in two different instances here in this verse in Leviticus 24 and 10. Right? So I want to take you guys to a man by the name of Dr. Henry Abramson. Right? And he's notable for his teachings on Jewish history and Judaism as a religion. He was assistant and later associate professor of history and Jewish studies at Florida Atlantic University from 96 to 06. And during that time, he held appointments at a number of prestigious universities such as Oxford, Cornell, Harvard, and Hebrew University. He received his PhD in history from the University of Toronto. Dr. Michael Brown has even recently referenced his work on his Line of Fire show to assist the caller in understanding Jews in the diaspora. Right, so he's a very qualified man and somebody who Dr. Michael Brown recognizes as credible. Right, when describing the founding and genetic bottleneck event for the Ashkenazi Jews, he names the Kalanimus family as the nucleus thereof. Sometime around the year 800 CE, a small group of Jews, he says, left northern Italy. The Kalanimus family, for example, they made their way to the Rhineland in contemporary Germany. Those people formed the nucleus of Ashkenazi Jewry. So according to Dr. Henry Abramson, this Kalanimus family is a former of the nucleus of Ashkenazi Jewry. And this, coincidentally enough, is a symbol of the Kalanimus family, which is an eagle. Right? Now let's go to the Jewish Virtual Library and see what they had to say about the Kalanimus family. The Kalanimus, one of the most eminent Jewish families in Germany, which flourished from the 9th to 13th century, especially in the cities near the Rhine. Among its members were numerous rabbis, preachers, poets, teachers, authors, moralists, and theologians. And most of the prominent communal leaders of this period came from its ranks. The origin of that family go back to the 8th century Italy. Notice it's Italy they go back to, not Israel, Italy. Although the name Kalanimus appeared in Talmudic literature, the father of Onkelos, the great translator of the Bible, was, according to Al-Dazarah 11a, called Kalanimus. So we're tracking this history of this Kalanimus family, right? So
wow, so he just took off. Dr. Brown's legs, because what Dr. Brown was trying to do, he was trying to connect the Ashkenazis to the people of the Bible, and what Guerrilla Hebrew just did was used the testimony of a credible Oscar, the research, right, of another PhD, right, which was a good thing, because remember I told y'all that when y'all doing research like that, there's always two sides of the study. Okay, so what he just did was what I said that he should have done, and that was good on his part. He just took off the legs, of Dr. Brown, because he disconnected Dr. Brown from the Jews of the Bible. Good move, Guerrilla Hebrew.
They reference the oldest Kalanimus member who's referenced in Talmudic literature. So let's go to this Talmudic literature and read what it says about the origins of this Kalanimus family. The Gemara mentions other Romans who converted to Judaism. It relates Onkelos bar Kalanimus converted to Judaism. So according to Dr. Henry Abramson, the Jewish Virtual Library, and the Talmud, the Ashkenazi Jews were founded by a family of Italian Roman converts. They cannot be the legit children of Israel.
Based on Henry Abramson.
So this is who I am saying is the legit children of Israel. It's very clear through some of the things said in Dr. Brown's opening round that he doesn't actually understand the claims being made here. At no point are we claiming that this is the absolute for all of the Israelites in the world. At no point, right?
Oh, what Dr. Brown is going to have to do now is he's going to have to do to what Gorilla Hebrew just did to him, because Gorilla Hebrew just took off his legs. Gorilla Hebrew just took off his legs, y'all. I'm telling you. So what he's going to have to do, he's going to have to use those evidences that he said right in his opening statement. He's going to go back to what he's going to have to do is go back to his opening statement, and the ways that he was saying that this stuff does not connect, he's going to have to demonstrate that.
But this is the people who we believe are affected here in the Americas and are Israelites in the Americas. This doesn't count for any other parts of the world, but we do emphatically take the stance that the Ashkenazi Jews are not Israelites, right? So again, Judah, the African Americans, Benjamin, the Commonwealth and Dutch Caribbean, Levi, the Haitian, Simeon, Dominicans, Zebulun, the Central Americans, Ephraim, Puerto Ricans, Manasseh, Cubans, Gad, Native Americans, Reuben, Seminole Indians, Naphtali, Indigenous Argentinian and Chileans, Asher, Native Colombian and Uruguayans, Issachar, Mexicans. Right? Dr. Brown affirms, as he's already said, that the Israelites of antiquity were not white. There was not a single white Jew until roughly the 8th century AD. And the Igbo of Nigeria have a valid claim to Israelite descent, which basically is a virtual forfeiture of this debate. I'll explain later, right? He also just today said there's no doubt that there are both black and Hispanic Jews, also a virtual forfeiture, right? He also says the Israelites were not white, but they were also not black, but brown. But if you take a look at our chart here, which I in this version of the chart that I cultivated, Spirit got on me to cultivate, all praise to the Most High for it, and that he already referenced. If you pay attention, the median color of this chart is brown. So this actually also validates our stance, right? Moving on. Let's go back to the Igbo, though, because he said the Igbo have a valid claim to being Israelites. The Igbo became one of the principal ethnic groups to be enslaved during the Atlantic slave trade. So one of the greatest ethnic groups that is a contributor to the Atlantic slave trade are the Igbo, and they make up for a large deal, especially the...
Well, my people was on slave trade, and my people were Berbers, and they're dark African looking people. They kind of look like Fulani people. You know what I'm saying? They were Berbers.
Majority of African Americans are of Igbo descent, right? Now, according to the foundational narratives taken from Igbo oral tradition, they say that some Jews left Judah in the periods of the destruction of the first and second temples and migrated to Nigeria. So this means that according to their oral traditions, they are of the southern kingdom, exactly who we say they are. So the Igbo maintained that they were of the southern kingdom, and they were a great contributor to the slaves that were brought over here to the United States of America and the Caribbean, which would explain why we say Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? According...
See what the doctor's going to do. He's going to have to recant his statement when he said every single one. He's going to have to say he didn't mean that like that on that chart. He meant every. He should say I meant every single one, excluding the Negro, because those other people are not Israelites.
To tradition and genetics are the tribes that are the so-called black tribes, the ones that were brought over here from West Africa. Right? So there's traditions and genetics, things that he says we didn't have that substantiate that. But wait, there's more. Right? This is Ezekiel 4 and 5 to 6. So I want to go into some biblical prophecy here, and again, let the word of God speak to really identify us and disqualify the Ashkenazim from, of course, being the legitimate children of Israel, right? I have assigned you the same number of days as the years of their sin. So for 390 days, you will bear the sin of the people of Israel. After you have finished this, lie down again, this time on your right side, and bear the sin of the people of Judah. I have assigned you 40 days, a day for each year. So the Most High God has the prophet Ezekiel lay on each of his sides to represent a judgment for the sins of Israel that will happen. Right? One for 390 days, the other for 40 days. We take 390, we add 40, we have 430. So this represents 430 consecutive years of a specific judgment for the transgressions of the nation of Israel. Right? Now, coincidentally enough, in the 1440s, we see the start of the European slave trade in Africa. And in the 1870s, we see the importation of slaves from Africa coming to an end in the Americas, the Atlantic slave trade, right? So if we take 1870, we minus it by 1440, we Get 430. 430 years of that judgment that God pronounced on the nation of Israel. And this, of course, affected all the people on the chart, right? Because not only did you have West Africans kidnapped and taken from West Africa and brought over here, you had Taino Indians that were shipped to Spain. You had Native Americans of the Pequot tribe of New England taken and shipped down to Cuba. You had Mayans shipped down to Cuba, et cetera, et cetera. So this affected all people, so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian, collectively for 430 years. I would love for Dr. Brown tonight to demonstrate us a 430-year type of judgment that his people, the Ashkenazim, experienced. Moving on. Isaiah 42 and 22, it reads, but his people, right, God's people, have been robbed and plundered, enslaved, imprisoned, and trapped. They are fair game for anyone and have no one to protect them, no one to take them back home. So let's analyze this here, right? Black and Hispanic people have undoubtedly been robbed and spoiled, have been enslaved, and then take a look at this term, imprisoned, right? The United States of America presently has more prisoners than any other country on the face of the planet Earth. And who are the predominant people that are incarcerated in the United States of America? Oh, Black and Hispanic people, right? And trapped. We've been trapped so much that now we call our own neighborhoods the trap, right? They are fair game for anyone and have no one to protect them. I want to analyze that, right? We just turned the clock back a few months now, and we see what happened to Kyrie Irving and Kanye West for the things that they simply said about Jewish people, right? Now, we also see just a year or two ago an anti-Asian hate bill get passed.
Well, surely the Jewish people have a whole bunch of people. Have a whole bunch of people to protect them. They surely have a whole bunch of people to protect them, and they does not fit this identity right here.
But Black and Hispanic and Native Indian people have seen more hatred, more oppression, more violence than any other group of people on the soils of America, yet there has never been a bill specifically passed to protect us. Why? Because as the Bible says, we don't have anyone to protect us. And here's the key. No one to take them back home. In 1948, the Ashkenazi Jews apparently got taken back home. But according to prophecy, no one is supposed to take you back home. Right? That goes back to, remember what I said, Isaiah 8 and 20. Whoever's identity contradicts the word of God, that's who is in darkness. I think that's being very clearly illustrated and demonstrated before you now. Now, if we take a look at the context of Isaiah 42, I watched a very interesting debate between Dr. Michael Brown and a rabbi about Christ in the Old Testament, right? And in that, he identifies the fact that he can make a case that the context of Isaiah 42 is actually messianic because verse 1 talks about this righteous servant and him coming to save. So that's actually the context. We're talking about what Christ is coming to do when he's coming to save his people. Right? If anybody tries to play a game and say, oh, well, this happened in Babylon. No. The context is dealing with that righteous servant and his deliverance of this entire chapter. I just want to make that clear, right? Now, there's been talk about DNA. Oh, there's been talk about DNA. And it's funny that there's been so much talk about DNA. I knew he was going to do this, right? So now, I don't subscribe to the idea that there's DNA that can actually trace anybody back anywhere in antiquity. I don't subscribe to that whatsoever, but he does. There's a problem with that. So the problem with DNA, according to sequencing.com, which is a leading DNA research company, Jewishness is more difficult to identify in genetic testing than other ethnic groups. This is because there is no specific gene that makes a person Jewish. Also, straightforward DNA examination cannot conclusively tell a person whether or not they are Jewish descent or a part of a Jewish population. So what's interesting is one of his objections to the 12 tribe chart was, well, you cannot demonstrate a genetic connection between these people, but it is impossible for anybody to actually demonstrate a genetic connection between any modern people and the ancient Israelites. That cannot be done. So he's asking me to do something that is not only impossible, but something that his people cannot do either, right? Moving on. Another problem with DNA. According to Raphael Falk, an Ashkenazi Jew and geneticist who is professor of genetics at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, is he qualified enough for you? There is no Jewish genotype to identify. Also, same guy, Raphael Falk, again, an Ashkenazi Jew who is a geneticist and professor at the Hebrew University. Also, there is no agreed upon criterion to identify Jews, and samples examined for the distribution of biological or molecular markers.
Well, hold up. I had to stop there. Well, so far, I have to give the opening round to Gorilla Hebrew, just for good argumentation's sake. He did very tactful things, but and I don't believe that there's no genetics, right, that can mark a people as Jews, right? Because for different reasons than he says, but there is a large number of E1B1A people that practice Judaism amongst the Moabites, which are E1B1 people, right? The E1B the former EB3 people, okay, and amongst those people are people that practice Judaism, people that are hold on to the Tamzibit and different Berber traditions, Mozabite traditions, uh, Sanhaja traditions, right, and Islamic traditions. So you have a lot going on there, but you also have those that practice Jewish tradition, and they were not converts. These people were actually Jewish first. So there is a gene and a large group of people with genes that practice these religions. So you can identify the E1B1A and the E1B1B gene to Jews. You can do that.
All depend on the preconceived biases of the investigators. I want everybody to make sure they understand that loud and clear. This is an Ashkenazi Jew who is a geneticist and a professor, and he says these conclusions that are being came to by these Jews that allegedly affirm their identity with DNA are all depend on preconceived biases. I mean, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm just a high school dropout. What do I know? But here is this person who is an Ashkenazi Jew and geneticist. And he says that these markers that they're trying to purport, demonstrate that they are Jews, all depend on preconceived biases. A minute.
Now, all the doctor got to do is play that game with him and go back in the genetic pool and argument, because these people argue over stuff like this and go and find somebody to debunk him. You know what I'm saying? So that's a game that they shouldn't even play, the gene game. But they're going to do it. So let's let the ball bounce.
30 left. That's crazy, right? But here I am. I'm supposed to believe what Dr. Michael Brown is doing. You see him shuffling now, don't you? Y'all see him live shuffling. He's shuffling for that. You know what? I need him to deal with this. I need him to deal with why one of his own brethren, who is a professor of geneticists in Israel, would say this about them if it wasn't true. Right? And mind you, this is via an article that was published in Frontiers of Genetics. This is a peer-reviewed scientific journal on genetics.
That don't mean nothing.
This isn't just a Google article. This is peer-reviewed scholastic research.
There's peer-reviewed evidence that can debunk that.
Linguistics. The problem with DNA and linguistics. In 2017, Paul Wexler, an Ashkenazi Jew and a linguist, and is a professor of linguistics at Tel Aviv University in Israel, along with a few other scholars, published an article in Frontiers of Genetics called The Origin of Ashkenazi Jews, and Yiddish. They came to some interesting conclusions with their findings, right? So again, here is an Ashkenazi Jew who is a linguist and a professor at another prestigious university in the country of Israel, right? And he did.
All the doctor got to do is go with the appeal to authority, logical fallacy, and ask him to prove what he says, and not use the authority of appealing to the authorities. Allow him to demonstrate what the authority says, and that's what he's supposed to do. He should take him outside of what the authority says and ask him to demonstrate that, and if he can't demonstrate that, then he would be appealing to authority.
A genetic and linguistic test. Remember, because Dr. Michael Brown also,
you only supposed to use the authorities to validate what you are saying. You're not supposed to appeal to the authorities, and that's what he's doing.
Utilizes linguistics as evidence to validate the legitimacy of Ashkenazi Jews as children of Israel. So let's see what they found in 2017, and I guarantee that this scholarship and these studies are more up to date than the ones he's utilizing to affirm the Ashkenazi Jews' legitimacy as Israel.
I don't know about that one.
Time.
The argument go back and forth, man. That's not a smart thing to say.
All right, thank you very much.
Did I get my 2-minute warning?
Yeah. We put on the screen. I said it in the mic too.
My fault.
I was trying to. I did it when you took a pause, so I said 1.5 minutes because I don't think you saw me when I did that. But yeah. Okay, so there we go. Thank you, Alazar. Appreciate that very much. We're all set. And Brother Brian, I'm still not a mod. You got to do it on YouTube. You click on the 3 little dots on the side of my name on YouTube, not on StreamYard. But debate's going excellent so far. I'm very pleased with how many people we got here. Thank you again to Brother Brian for holding this down and making this happen.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to enter into the first rebuttal. The way rebuttals are supposed to work. It's not supposed to be introduction of new information.
This is going to be good.
It is supposed to be a response follow-up to what has been presented thus far. That's the way rebuttals are supposed to work. So we have 2 of these back to back. Of course, Dr. Brown goes first, Alazar goes second. And so it's 20 minutes total, 10 minutes each. So Dr. Brown, are you ready for your 10-minute rebuttal? Just a minute, let me set this timer. I got to change it from 17 to 10. I'm going to start as soon as you start speaking, and then I will mute myself. Go ahead, it's your first rebuttal.
Well, we're going to stop this right here. We just had the debate. The debate went in, and we heard the opening rounds. I'm not going to get into the rebuttals, okay? And I'm not going to because this is fair usage. I'm using this under the fair use law and for critiquing educational and entertainment purposes. And therefore, I can't have the whole thing in there like that, at least without breaks, without talks and things like that. But there was some good jabs thrown between the both of them. I would have to say that in the actual opening round, I would have to, and to my surprise, I would have to give it to the mighty Hebrew on the strength that Michael Brown made us boo-boo when he said nobody on that chart, fits the description. And the African Americans are on that chart. The stalk that created the African Americans are on that chart. Okay, and that's why Eleazar ran to them. Eleazar's smart. He's tactful. He didn't run to the history of the Arawaks and the Tianos and all of those other people. He didn't run to those histories, and that was smart. He ran to the Israelites. So in the rebuttal, and we'll probably look over that tomorrow, but in the rebuttal, what we're going to do is tap into the rebuttal and see who won the rebuttal aspect, and then we're going to call who won the totality of the debate. But so far in the opening round, I would have to give it to Eleazar, because when you listen to the totality of both of these men, I mean, the doctor did attack the Indian, the non-African Americans that are on that chart. And Eleazar, in his opening round, did not defend them. He went straight to the African American. And when he said nobody on that chart, including African Americans, and that's where he shot himself at in the foot. And that's where he lost that in that debate. Yeah, it was a good debate. I'm glad I got a chance to see it. It was some powerful information. But it's a sad win for the mighty Hebrew. I mean the gorilla Hebrew. It's a very sad win. And I'm gonna tell you why it's a sad win. Because they still get to push that chart which has been debunked. And the PhD, Dr. Brown, did a terrible job at debunking that chart. You know, he did destroy the he would have won if he would have not said everyone on that chart. If he would have said the people on that chart, the majority of the people on that chart, and or just said that there are people on that chart that couldn't possibly be Israel, then he would have won the debate. But when he said that not one person on that chart, that caused him to lose the debate. That being that, this is Yasha Ben Israel. I enjoyed watching that. That was very, very, very good. And the Black Hebrew Israelites, far as the debate itself goes, I'd have to give it to Eleazar. That being stated, I'm out. Maybe tomorrow I'll do a recap on the rebuttal. Peace.